Coward. Adrian Moretti said it quietly, which somehow made it worse. The room went still around us. 6 men in dark suits, 1 open laptop, 2 photographs spread across the table, and a security feed frozen on the moment a black sedan entered Dock 9. Adrian stood at the far end of the table with one hand braced against the wood. You had one job, Elias. Stay inside the building until my people cleared the dock. Instead, you ran. I looked at the photograph nearest me, then at him. I left. That's a generous word for it. It's the accurate one. His jaw tightened. Mine probably should have. Instead, I picked up my coat. I'd spent too much of my life arguing with people who'd already decided what fear was supposed to look like. Adrian stepped around the table. If you walk out that door, don't expect me to come looking for you. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because he still thought he was the one holding all the cards. Good, I said. Then you won't waste your time. I made it 3 steps before I stopped. There was one thing I couldn't leave him with. Not if he was planning to move on Dock 9 tonight. I reached into my coat, pulled out a folded shipping manifest, and set it beside the photographs. Adrian glanced down. What is this? The reason I left. One of his men scoffed. Adrian didn't. He unfolded the page. His attention sharpened almost immediately. He read the same line twice. Container 4C, 118. Logged into Dock 9 at 11:42 p.m., cleared by Moretti Security at 11:47. Except the security image on the table showed the container still being unloaded at 12:16. Adrian looked up. Where did you get this? Does it matter? It matters if it's fake. Then check the customs timestamp. He turned to the man at the laptop. Do it. 10 seconds later, the man's face went pale. Timestamp's legitimate. Adrian looked back at me. The room had changed. 5 minutes ago, I was the coward who ran. Now I was the only person standing there who knew why a container had been officially cleared 29 minutes before it physically arrived. There's more, Adrian said. It wasn't a question. I put on my coat. Probably. Elias. Adrian. One of his men moved toward the door before I reached it. I stopped. Adrian noticed. Move, he told him. The man hesitated. Boss, I said move. The doorway cleared. I didn't thank him. He didn't expect me to. But he had just chosen not to use 6 armed men and a closed room to force an answer out of me. I noticed choices like that. I noticed everything. You knew that record was wrong, he said. I knew the timing was wrong. How? Because I was there when the truck arrived. His gaze narrowed. You said you left. I did. Before the transfer. Before your transfer. That landed. Adrian's hand flattened on the manifest. Explain. I hated that word when it came from men like him. Explain usually meant defend yourself until I decide you're human again. So I gave him facts instead. At 11:58, someone opened the east service gate from inside your security network. At midnight, a truck came through without stopping. No scan. No inspection. Nothing. I watched your people wave it in. My people don't wave unregistered vehicles through. Then you have a problem. And you walked away instead of reporting it. There it was again. My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag. I reported it. Adrian went still. To who? Your operations chief. Marco frowned from beside the laptop. Rourke. I nodded. He told me the truck had already been cleared and that I was confused. Then he told me to go back upstairs and stay out of things I didn't understand. Adrian stared at me. And you left? Yes. Why? I could have told him the whole truth. That 20 minutes later I'd seen Rourke meet the driver behind the maintenance building. That I'd watched him take a sealed gray envelope. That I'd taken one photograph before Rourke turned his head, and I realized exactly how exposed I was. But Adrian still wasn't asking because he trusted me. He was asking because he needed information. There was a difference. Because staying would have been stupid. His mouth hardened. You expect me to believe you ran because you were being careful? I don't care what you believe. That hurt more than I wanted it to. Some words don't need shouting to find an old bruise. Coward was one of them. Adrian glanced at the manifest. If Rourke cleared that truck, he didn't. You just said. I said he told me it had been cleared. I pointed to the authorization code printed near the bottom. That isn't Rourke's code. Marco leaned closer. Whose is it? I don't know. Adrian's attention snapped back to me. But you know something. I reached for the door. I know enough not to stand in a room where everyone has already decided what I am. This time Adrian didn't insult me. He didn't order anyone to stop me either. I stepped into the hallway and heard him behind me say, Marco, lock down Dock 9. Quietly. A beat. and pull every access log from 11:30 to 12:30. I kept walking. My phone vibrated before I reached the elevator. Unknown number. One message. You should have kept walking last night. I stopped. A second message arrived. A photograph of me leaving Dock 9, taken from less than 20 feet away. Whoever sent it hadn't just known I was there. They had been close enough to watch me leave. Then a third message appeared. He doesn't know what you took. Keep it that way. My hand went instinctively to the inside of my coat, where something thin and hard rested beneath the lining. I didn't take it out. Not here. Not with cameras in the hallway and Adrian's men behind a closed door. I looked back toward the conference room. Until that moment, I'd thought the secret made Adrian dangerous to me. Now someone else knew I had taken something from Dock 9, and whatever it was, they were more afraid of Adrian seeing it than I was. I didn't get on the elevator. I stood there staring at the photograph on my phone until the doors opened, waited, and closed again without me. Whoever had taken it had been close enough to see which hand I used to push through the service exit. Close enough to follow me. Close enough to know I'd taken something from Dock 9. The conference room door opened behind me. Adrian stepped out first, Marco right behind him. You're still here. Don't sound disappointed. It came out drier than I intended. Adrian's attention dropped to the phone in my hand. What happened? My first instinct was to lock the screen. Keep one thing in mind. That instinct had kept me alive before. It was also starting to look dangerously similar to the isolation whoever sent those messages expected from me. I held the phone out. Adrian read them once. Then again. Who knows what you took? Apparently someone with excellent timing. Marco moved closer. What did you take? I looked at Adrian. Now you're asking the right question. His expression tightened, but he didn't correct me. I opened the photo I'd taken behind the maintenance building. Rourke stood beside the truck driver, half turned from the camera, a sealed gray envelope between them. Marco swore under his breath. Adrian zoomed in. This is what they mean. No, that got both of them looking at me. This is what they think I took. I reached inside my coat and pulled out the thin black access card I'd kept hidden beneath the lining. No logo. No printed name. Just 6 digits scratched by hand into one corner. Adrian's hand stopped halfway toward it. Where did you get that? Under the truck. You crawled under a truck during an unauthorized transfer? Technically, I bent down. Marco looked between us. You two can litigate the definition of coward later. I almost smiled. Adrian did not, but his hand lowered instead of taking the card. What does it open? I don't know. Then why keep it? Because Rourke came back looking for it. The danger changed shape immediately. The card wasn't something I had accidentally picked up after a suspicious transfer. Someone inside Adrian's operation had known it was missing. Adrian turned to Marco. Did the access logs come back? Marco checked his phone. Partial. Dock 9's local log is intact. Central Archive has a gap from 11:46 to 12:20. Convenient, I said. Adrian gave me a sideways look. You do this often? Notice when criminals alter records? Annoy people while they're trying to save your life. Only the controlling ones. Marco coughed into his fist, suspiciously close to a laugh. Adrian ignored him. You're not leaving alone. That sounds like an order. It is. Then no. The answer came too quickly, but I meant it. Adrian stepped closer, stopping before he crowded me. Someone photographed you from 20 feet away. They know you took something. They know I don't have it. If you walk outside alone, they don't have to guess where you are anymore. And your solution is to lock me somewhere? My solution is to keep you alive long enough to tell me when I'm wrong. That caught me off guard. Adrian wasn't doing kind yet, but it was the first time he'd admitted I might know something he didn't without making it sound temporary. I looked at the card. No safe house. Fine. No confiscating my phone. Fine. Marco raised an eyebrow. Adrian shot him a look. Don't. Wasn't going to say anything. You were thinking loudly. A short breath escaped me that might have become a laugh if my phone hadn't buzzed again. New message. Not him. The card. Adrian saw it. They know exactly what it is. More than we do. Then we stopped guessing. 10 minutes later, we were back inside the conference room with a clean reader Marco had brought up. Offline, he told me. Physically isolated from the building network. He set it on the table and slid it toward me. Your call. Nobody blocked the door. Nobody asked me to surrender the card. I inserted it myself. The screen populated with 4 lines. No names. No account numbers. Just dates, access points, authorization hashes, and a status column labeled validation. 3 entries showed complete. The fourth showed pending. Adrian leaned over the table without touching the reader. Those are internal routing keys. For what? Secure warehouse transfers. Marco's face changed. Not just Moretti warehouses. He pointed to the second line. That one belongs to Bolano. Even I knew the rival family. The third belonged to municipal evidence storage. The fourth made Adrian go silent. My private archive. I looked at the status column again. What does pending validation mean? Marco shook his head. Not sure. This isn't our interface. So don't test it. Adrian glanced at me. Why? Because someone just threatened me over this card. Until we know what validation does, pressing anything that sounds like approve seems unnecessarily adventurous. Adrian considered. That, then nodded. Nobody activates anything. It was a small decision, but an important one. The card could authenticate something, and we had no idea what. For systems that should never share a credential had somehow been tied to the same object. I turned the card over. How many people could create access across all four? Not Rourke, Adrian said. That mattered. The man I'd seen taking the envelope might be dirty, but he wasn't high enough to build what we were looking at. Someone above him, or close enough to Adrian's level, was moving through systems that weren't supposed to connect. Adrian reached for his phone, then stopped himself. If central logs are compromised, I don't use the network. He looked at me. Not at Marco. Me. What would you do? It was the first real question he'd asked me all night. I turned the black card between my fingers. Nothing yet. His expression almost reverted to the man who'd called me a coward. Almost. Nothing. Whoever sent those texts expects us to panic. If the card suddenly disappears from circulation, or if you lock down every warehouse, they'll know we found the pattern. Marco nodded slowly. Adrian said nothing. I continued. We let them think I still have no idea what I picked up. You do still have it, Adrian said. That helps. His mouth twitched once. Barely there. Dangerous sense of humor. I learned from controlling people. Then Marco's phone lit up. He frowned and turned the screen toward Adrian. A security alert from Dock 9. Rourke's access badge had just been used at the East Gate. Adrian looked at the timestamp. That's impossible. Why? I asked. Marco answered. Because Rourke's been in a locked interview room downstairs for the last 20 minutes. Nobody spoke. Adrian looked at the black card in my hand, then at the alert. The card connected systems that should never connect. The central logs had been cut. And now an identity inside Adrian's organization was moving through Dock 9 while its owner sat under guard. Someone wasn't just hiding inside his security structure. They could make that structure report whatever version of reality they needed us to believe. The fake Rourke badge was still active. That was the first useful thing about it. Someone had copied an identity inside Adrian's security system, but instead of using it once and disappearing, they kept moving it through Dock 9. East Gate. Maintenance corridor. Freight office. 3 checkpoints in 6 minutes. Marco reached for his radio. I'll send a team. Don't, I said. Adrian looked at me. Why? I pointed at the timestamps. Because they know you can see this. Marco frowned. That doesn't make the intruder less real. No. It makes the route suspicious. No failed doors. No hesitation. Whoever's carrying that badge is walking exactly where your alerts can follow. Adrian studied the screen. Leading us somewhere. Or pulling us away from somewhere. He made the decision without asking me to prove it twice. No pursuit. Pull cameras everywhere except the badge route. Start west. 3 minutes later, Marco found the consequence of that choice. While the copied credential marched east, a maintenance van rolled out through the west service lane without scanning anything. Its plate belonged to a Moretti catering vehicle parked 2 floors below us. Freeze that, I said. The van's rear doors were shut, but a strip of white paper hung from one hinge. A red diagonal mark crossed it. I pulled the manifest from part of me, still wanted to call it my manifest, because giving evidence to Adrian felt too much like surrendering control. Instead, I laid it beside the screen. Container 4C, 118 carried the same slash. Adrian noticed before I said anything. That mark. I thought it was routing. Marco checked an offline archive rather than the compromised network. He found one older shipping form with the same slash. Then a second. Both had passed through Dock 9. More important, both carried authorization hashes resembling the entries on the black card. One tied to municipal evidence storage, another to Bolano property. I stopped him before he searched further. Enough. Marco's hands lifted from the keyboard. Adrian understood why. If they can see what we query, searching the pattern tells them exactly how much we know. Right? For once, discovery gave us a limit instead of another. Chase. We had proof that the card and the Doc 9 transfer weren't isolated. Someone had been moving through systems that were supposed to be separate. The question was how. I looked at the printed schedules on the table. Don't search what moved. Adrian waited. Search what didn't. We used paper. No live databases, no access queries. Just old schedules Marco already had in the room. The pattern emerged slowly enough to trust. On both nights marked by the red slash, a legitimate Moretti transfer had been canceled within 90 minutes of the suspicious movement. Same dock capacity. Same staffing window. Different cargo. Someone wasn't sneaking shipments into Adrian's system. They were creating empty space first. Adrian leaned over the forms. Who controls cancellations? Managers sign them, Marco said. But operations coordination receives every staffing change. Rourke's office, Adrian said. For a moment, the evidence seemed to hand us the answer. Rourke had received the envelope. Rourke had tried to send me away. His office controlled the openings used by the hidden transfers. Then I saw the oldest date. No, Adrian glanced at me. No what? Rourke didn't have that office 7 months ago. Marco checked. He was regional security. The apparent answer collapsed, but not the progress. Rourke could still be involved. He just hadn't built the corridor. Somebody had been using the same operational weakness before he had authority over it. Adrian straightened. So Rourke is either working for whoever started this, or someone wants his office attached to it. That's closer. Closer than what? Than deciding you already know. He gave me a look, but there was less irritation in it now. You enjoy this. Being right. Correcting me. I'm developing a taste for it. Marco suddenly became very interested in the paperwork. The moment didn't last. A knock hit the conference room door, and one of Adrian's guards entered without crossing the threshold. Boss, we found the maintenance van. Adrian turned. Driver. Gone. Van was abandoned 2 blocks south. Anything inside? The guard hesitated. A phone. Whose? Elias Vale's. My actual phone was still in my hand. The guard continued. Same model. Same case. Same lock screen photo. Number registered to him. The threat changed instantly. The copied Rourke badge had shown they could impersonate access. The duplicate phone showed they could impersonate a person. Nobody touches it, I said. Adrian looked at me. You think it's compromised? I think it's supposed to be found. I pulled up the photograph of Rourke receiving the envelope. Look at what they've given us tonight. Rourke's badge walking through the dock. Rourke's office attached to the cancellations. Now my phone in the escape vehicle. Marco's expression hardened. They can load anything onto it. Calls. Messages. Photos. A complete relationship between me and Rourke that never happened. Adrian looked toward his guard. Secure the van. No device connections. No one opens the phone. The guard left. Adrian turned back to me. They're framing you. Not just me. I tapped the oldest cancellation. They're building an explanation. Rourke is the corrupt insider. I'm the witness who was secretly working with him. You find both pieces and stop looking. Adrian was silent for 2 seconds. Then he picked up his radio. Release Rourke from the interview room. Marco stared at him. Adrian. Keep him watched. Quietly. But if someone wants him locked up, I want to know what he does when he thinks he isn't. That was more than trusting my observation. He was changing strategy because of it. A few hours ago, he'd treated my refusal to act quickly as weakness. Now he was using it. After Marco left to arrange Rourke's release, I noticed blood where my thumbnail had cut into my palm around the black card. Adrian noticed too. He pushed a clean handkerchief across the table instead of reaching for me. You're bleeding. Your investigative technique is improving. I had a good teacher. I looked at him, uncertain whether he meant it. He didn't take it back. I picked up the cloth. Breathing room. Maybe 10 seconds of it. Then I saw the repeated number. It appeared beside both old cancellation forms, not as an authorization code, but as an audit reference. Same number. 7 months apart. Marco. I called before he reached the door. He came back. Can audit references repeat? No. I turned the forms toward him. This one did. Adrian's attention sharpened. What does that mean? Marco read the number, and his face changed. Someone reused an old audit identity to make a new record look previously verified. Who can do that? I asked. Marco didn't answer immediately. Adrian did. Executive security. The room went quiet. How many people have that level of access? I asked. Adrian looked at the duplicated audit reference, then at the black card we had deliberately refused to validate. 2. His voice lost all warmth. Me, and the man who taught me how to run this organization. Adrian didn't get the chance to tell me who the second executive security credential belonged to. Every light in the conference room went out at once. Not flickered. Gone. A second later, red emergency strips lit the floor, and somewhere below us a steel door slammed shut. Marco checked his phone. Network's down. Not down, I said. The black card reader still had power, but its 4 status lines had vanished behind a connection warning. Cut off. Adrian's radio cracked. Boss, breach on 7. Record storage. Another voice followed immediately. Fire suppression activated in executive archives. Adrian looked at the duplicated audit reference on the table. We had just identified executive security as the level capable of reusing it. Now someone was destroying executive audit records. That wasn't random pressure. Someone knew where our investigation had landed. Marco, archive, Adrian ordered. Paper recovery only. Don't reconnect anything. Marco left with 2 guards. I reached for my coat. Adrian blocked the doorway with one arm. You stay here. Someone just isolated the building after we found a forged audit identity, which is why you're not wandering through it. And if they know what we found, this room is hardly secret. He hated the logic. I could see it. Then he lowered his arm. Stay with me. Still an instruction, but he'd changed it instead of forcing the first one. We took the service stairs. On the 5th floor landing, his radio came alive. Boss, Rourke's gone. Adrian. Stopped. Define gone. Interview room empty. Guard outside unconscious. Breathing. No obvious trauma. Rourke had been released because Adrian accepted my argument that someone wanted him framed and contained. Now he had vanished under cover of the blackout. That consequence belonged partly to me. If you want to say it, I told Adrian. Say what? That releasing him was a mistake. He looked at me. Was it? I thought about the fake badge, the duplicate phone, the 7-month-old cancellation. I don't know yet. Neither do I. He started down again. So we don't invent certainty because we're scared. He had thrown my own method back at me. I followed. On the 4th floor landing, a shot punched through the door below us and tore metal from the railing. Adrian caught the back of my coat and pulled me against the concrete before a second round struck where I'd been standing. He slammed the fire door shut and dropped the manual bolt. His radio crackled with a guard's voice. Shooter used the south stairwell. Security feed shows a Moretti response code, but the ID belongs to a man posted across town. Another copied identity. Same tactic as Rourke's badge, now turned lethal. Whoever controlled the false credentials wasn't just manufacturing records anymore. They were using Adrian's own access structure to move attackers through the building. A shard from the railing had cut my palm. Adrian noticed the blood. You're hurt. Your floor started it. He pulled a folded handkerchief from his pocket and held it out rather than taking my hand. Try not to bleed on anything expensive. That almost sounded human. Don't get attached. I took the cloth. 10 seconds of normality, maybe less. Then Marco came over the radio. Archive fire contained. They weren't burning the room. 1 cabinet only. Adrian looked at the audit forms in his hand. Executive audits. Exactly. What was removed? 1 file. Vincent Moretti. The name landed before Adrian had to say it. His uncle. His second executive security credential. The man who had taught him how to run the organization. The evidence suddenly looked almost complete. Vincent's access level matched the reused. Audit identity. Someone had targeted his audit file. The attack began immediately after we traced the forgery to executive security. Too clean, I said. Adrian turned. His credential can alter the records. Yes. His file is the one missing. Yes. And you think that makes him less suspicious? I think someone just shot at us using another copied Moretti identity while burning the exact evidence that would tell us whether Vincent's credential was genuine or cloned. Adrian went quiet. That was the meaningful difference. An hour earlier, he might have treated the name as the answer. Now he treated it as a hypothesis. His radio clicked. Static, then an older voice. Adrian. Adrian went completely still. Vincent, you need to leave the building. Where are you? Somewhere the network can't hear me for long. A burst of interference cut across the channel. Vincent continued. I saw the archive suppression alert on the emergency maintenance circuit. If my file is gone, They know you reached the audit layer. That answered why he had called now without answering whether we could trust him. Adrian's voice hardened. Did you use your old audit credential at Doc 9? Not tonight. That wasn't my question. And that isn't the question that keeps you alive. Another burst of static. Then Vincent said, ask why the Omega walked away. Adrian looked at me. What do you know about Elias? Rourke sent me a one-line warning through an offline pager channel at 12:23. Second truck observed. Witness removed from floor. That was all. My stomach tightened. Rourke hadn't merely noticed me. He had reported that I had seen the second truck. Vincent knew because Rourke had told him. Why would Rourke warn you? Adrian asked. Because 6 months ago I told him if Doc 9 ever showed an unlogged second vehicle, he was to clear civilians and witnesses before anyone opened an incident report. Why? Because incident reports are being watched. The line hissed. And because if Elias had stayed where your people wanted him, you would have moved on Bolano before midnight. Adrian's expression changed. That operation was scheduled. 43 people would have been inside that warehouse when you hit it. Silence filled the stairwell. Adrian had delayed Bolano only after my departure made Doc 9 uncertain. How do you know 43? I asked. Because I counted them. Who are they? The reason I'm still alive, if I still am. The radio broke into static. Adrian hit transmit. Vincent, nothing. Then Marco's voice replaced him. Adrian, I recovered one sheet from Vincent's cabinet. You need to see it. What is it? The Bolano authorization order. I signed Bolano. That's the problem. This copy was printed 3 hours before Elias left Doc 9. But there's a contingency instruction attached. If the Doc 9 witness refuses compliance, classify the witness as unreliable, remove operational access, proceed without delay. I looked at Adrian. Does it name me? No, Marco said. It says Doc 9 witness. That mattered. The instruction existed before anyone knew I would become the witness. Adrian's face hardened. Who signed it? Your signature is on the page. I never approved a witness contingency. I know. Marco paused. There's one more thing. The authorization number predates the intelligence packet that supposedly justified the Bolano strike. Adrian looked at me, and I saw him reach the same edge of the truth I did. Someone hadn't reacted to my walking away. They had prepared for a witness to resist before I ever entered the role. They had copied Adrian's authority, built a response around his habits, and expected him to keep moving. We finally knew the evidence against Vincent could be manufactured. We knew Rourke's attempt to remove me might have been a warning, not a betrayal. And we knew Adrian's Bolano operation had been authorized on paper before he had a reason to authorize it. What we still didn't know was why someone needed him to attack that warehouse, or why Vincent had known enough to count the people waiting inside. The forged authorization changed the question. Until then, we had been asking who had compromised Adrian's operation. Standing in the 4th floor west office with the half-burned Bolano order between us, I realized that was backwards. They didn't compromise your operation, I said. Adrian looked at me. They built it. Marco set the recovered page beside the original intelligence packet he'd brought from an offline file cabinet. The sequence numbers proved it. Adrian's supposed authorization existed first. The intelligence that justified attacking Bolano had been entered afterward. Even the contingency for an uncooperative Doc 9 witness had been prepared before anyone knew that witness would be me. Someone decided what you were going to do, I said, then manufactured the information that would make you choose it. Adrian read the 2 documents again. He didn't defend himself. 43 people in that warehouse. If Vincent's number is real, it is. Marco turned the intelligence packet around. Occupancy estimate says 12. I compared the source references. 3 came from systems represented on the black card. Moretti Logistics. Municipal Evidence Storage. Bolano-linked property records. Systems that should have contradicted each other had produced the same false picture. That was the reframe. The secret corridor wasn't simply moving illegal cargo through rival institutions. It was manufacturing agreement between them. And Adrian's war with Bolano wasn't threatening the corridor. It was what the corridor had been trying to create. Adrian picked up his radio. Cancel the Bolano strike. Don't, I said. He stopped. Not angrily this time. Why? Because whoever built this predicted you attacking. They'll predict you canceling once you discover the forgery. I pointed to the contingency instruction. Stop giving them Adrian Moretti on schedule. Marco looked between us. Then what do we do? Make the operation look active. Quietly remove anyone you absolutely trust from the strike team. Watch who tries to keep the original timetable alive. Adrian considered it for 2 seconds. Then he handed Marco the forged order. Do exactly that. Offline only. Marco left. No debate. No demand that I prove myself again. Adrian had just changed an active Mafia operation because I told him his certainty was being used as a weapon. That was the first real payoff of the word coward. Not an apology. Behavioral proof. When the door closed, Adrian looked at the blood-soaked handkerchief around my palm. Sit. I raised an eyebrow. He caught himself. Would you sit? That looked painful. I'm discovering several things are. He opened a first aid kit and put antiseptic, gauze, and tweezers on the desk without reaching for me. I sat because I chose to. He waited while I unwrapped the cloth. You really thought I ran? I said. Yes. Because I was afraid. Yes. He didn't soften it. Somehow that made the next part easier to hear. And now, Adrian looked at the forged authorization. Now I think someone knew exactly what I would call a man who refused to move when I told him to. He paused, and they counted on me doing it. That was different from guilt. He wasn't asking me to make him feel better. He was admitting his flaw had become part of the machinery used against us. I removed a sliver of metal from my palm. Don't overcorrect. I can still be irritating. That evidence remains overwhelming. Barely humor. Enough to let the room breathe. Then his radio clicked. Marco, we have movement. Adrian answered. Where? Rourke used his personal emergency code beneath Dock 9. Storage level. Camera confirmation? It's really him. I stood. Adrian didn't tell me to sit back down. He wasn't escaping, I said. He went back for something. We intercepted him coming out, Marco said. He had a paper manifest hidden behind an electrical panel. A major loop finally moved toward an answer. Rourke's envelope. His attempt to remove me. His disappearance after release. What's on it? Adrian asked. 43 names. The number Vincent had given us. Marco continued. Bolano employees. Moretti people. 2 city workers, an investigator, dock workers. Mixed affiliations. That was enough to destroy the last simple version of the Bolano story. The people inside the planned strike weren't 43 Bolano enemies. Whatever connected them crossed the same institutional lines as the black card. What did Rourke say about the envelope Elias photographed? I asked. He says it wasn't payment. Vincent gave it to the driver for him. A warning. Adrian's expression tightened. About what? Dock 9. Vincent had told Rourke months ago that if an unlogged second vehicle ever appeared, he was to get any witness off the floor before an incident report could identify them. The pieces from part 1 finally changed meaning without disappearing. Rourke had lied to me. He had dismissed me. He had pushed me out. But the evidence no longer supported the idea that he'd done it to protect the corridor. So he was trying to get me out before the system registered me. I said. Badly, Marco said. Very badly. Adrian looked at me. But he got you out. I got myself out. Fair correction. That mattered too. Marco continued. Rourke says Vincent gave him the hidden manifest 6 months ago. Told him never to enter it electronically. Told him to hide it unless Dock 9 was compromised. Adrian's face hardened. Then Vincent knew the corridor existed. Enough to fight it, I said. Not necessarily enough to control it. The distinction held now because we had evidence. Vincent's warning protocol predated tonight. Rourke's paper manifest had been kept outside monitored systems. Someone had burned Vincent's audit file exactly when we reached the executive layer. The apparent villain from Part 4 had become something more dangerous to the real enemy. A man interfering from inside. Where's Vincent? Adrian asked. Marco was silent for a beat. Rourke hasn't seen him since 3 hours before the Dock 9 transfer. The room lost its brief calm. Adrian looked toward the forged Bolano authorization. Then we find him. That was our new objective, but I shook my head. Not through your network. Agreed. Another change. Earlier, Adrian's power had been the obvious solution to every problem. Now using that power carelessly was part of the threat. I picked up the black card. And we stopped treating this as a hunt for one traitor. Whoever built this doesn't need to control every person. They control what each person sees, then let people like you act on it. Adrian didn't flinch from the description. So we find what Vincent knew before they erased the rest of it. And we stop reacting on their timetable. Marco's radio came alive again before he could answer. One more thing. Rourke says the 43 names weren't written all at once. Vincent added them over months as he found them. Found what? I asked. Rourke doesn't know. Marco paused. But there's a newer copy in the compartment. 44 names. My stomach tightened before he said it. The last entry was added in different ink after last night's transfer. Adrian looked at me. Marco finished quietly. Elias Vale. I stared at the black card in my hand. The forged contingency had existed before I became the witness, so this system hadn't been built around me. That was almost comforting. Almost. Because now we had proof of something worse. I had stepped outside the role prepared for whoever saw the second truck. I had kept the card, challenged the records, and helped Adrian stop following the script. The system had noticed the deviation. I hadn't uncovered a conspiracy that had always been hunting me. I had made myself important enough that it had started. My name becoming number 44 changed the problem immediately. Marco's radio crackled before any of us could decide what to do with it. 2 people on Vincent's list just received emergency relocation orders. Legitimate Moretti channels. A city employee got a warning that his cover was blown. Adrian's expression hardened. They know we found the list. Maybe, I said. Or they know Rourke went back for it. Either way, the corridor had changed tactics. It wasn't hiding evidence anymore. It was scattering the people connected to it. Adrian reached for his radio. I can secure all 44 and confirm we have their names. He stopped. Then whoever can reach them first knows exactly who needs silencing. Marco said, he's right. Adrian gave the radio a tired look. This evening has become extremely educational. Growth is painful, I said. His attention flicked to me. Apparently. The humor lasted about 2 seconds. My name was still on a list somebody had updated after I stopped behaving the way their plan required. I picked up the black card. We need Vincent. That was the new objective. Not expose the 44. Not chase another copied credential. Find the man who had been mapping the corridor before it adapted to me. Adrian nodded. Without using the network. You really are learning. Don't ruin it. We started with what Vincent had already left behind. Rourke said he kept evidence offline. The hidden manifest proved it. The black card carried 6 digits scratched by hand, the only deliberately analog mark on an object built to authenticate digital records. Adrian wrote them on paper. They could be a date. He rearranged the spacing. His expression changed. The day my father died. And the last digit. 6. Marco answered over the radio. Vincent's old executive office was on 6. We reached the converted storage floor 10 minutes later. No network search, no electronic lock. Adrian found the old office from memory. The desk was still bolted to the floor. I checked beneath it and found a recessed mechanical slot. The black card fit. That's reassuring, I said. Why? Adrian asked. Because for once this thing opened something without asking us to approve anything. Inside the hidden drawer sat a paper ledger and a small recorder. I opened the ledger first. 43 entries. Dates, initials, short descriptions. A dock worker who logged an unregistered truck. A city clerk who questioned an evidence transfer. A Bolano accountant who flagged duplicate storage fees. None knew the whole corridor. Together, they described it. Beside every entry was a number and a short string matching the format of the authorization hashes we had already seen. These aren't just witness numbers, I said. Adrian leaned closer. What are they? I put the first 3 pages beside one another. The dates were out of order, but the hash endings repeated forward. One entry referenced the previous entry's verification string. A chain. The black card reader from earlier came back to me. 3 complete validations, 1 pending. Each record depends on an earlier record being accepted. Adrian saw it. So the corridor makes separate systems validate each other. Not exactly each other. A sequence. If every link looks previously verified, the next one inherits credibility. I pointed to 2 entries carrying the same audit reference we had. Discovered before the blackout. And this is where they cheated. They reused an old verification identity instead of creating a clean link. That gave us something useful now. Not theoretical. If we could trace the sequence, we could identify which records were genuine before touching the compromised network. I turned on the recorder. Vincent's voice filled the office. If you found the ledger, do not gather the names. The numbers are dependency order, not chronology. The corridor survives because each false record borrows authority from something already accepted. Challenge a contradiction before validation, and the linked records are held pending for audit. Validate first, and the chain treats them as confirmed. Adrian looked at the black card. So did I? That explained the pending status we had wisely refused to touch earlier. The card wasn't merely access. It participated in validation. We still didn't know how much authority it carried, but now we knew enough not to use it blindly. Vincent continued. The duplicate audit references are the weakness. I found them because whoever built this reused trusted identities across systems that were never meant to be compared. I closed the ledger halfway. That's why they need the institutions separated. Adrian nodded. Moretti sees one clean record. Bolano sees another. The city sees another. Nobody compares the contradictions. The midpoint truth had become actionable. Our objective wasn't simply find Vincent anymore. It was reconstruct his dependency chain without validating anything along the way. The recorder clicked, then Vincent's voice returned. If Rourke reports a Doc 9 witness who refuses removal or notices the second vehicle, watch that person. Do not recruit them. Do not detain them. See what they do when authority tells them they're wrong. I stared at the recorder. Adrian looked at me. That was the basis I hadn't expected. Vincent hadn't chosen Elias Vale in advance. He had defined a behavior worth noticing. Rourke's offline warning at 12:23 had given him my name afterward. Tucked beneath the recorder was a small paper slip in noticeably fresher ink. Elias Vale walked. Kept evidence. Did not. Report through system. If I'm gone, send Elias. He was watching me, I said. After Rourke warned him, Adrian said. Not before. It still felt invasive, but not prophetic. Vincent had trusted a pattern of choices. I left instead of obeying, kept evidence instead of surrendering it, and refused to activate a card I didn't understand. Adrian reached for the ledger, then stopped. You're fined. It took me a second. He was waiting for permission. I handed it to him. Voluntarily. The difference was embarrassingly small and somehow enormous. Then he noticed the handkerchief around my palm had bled through again. He pulled a chair out. Would you sit? You remembered the phrasing. I'm trainable. I sat. This time, when he opened the first aid kit, I held my hand out before he asked. He cleaned the cut carefully without closing his fingers around my wrist. You should leave Moretti territory tonight, he said. I almost pulled my hand back. That's your response to trust. Your name was added to a kill list. And leaving without understanding this chain makes me isolated, not safe. He set the gauze down. I can protect you. That's not the same as deciding for me. Silence. Then Adrian nodded. No, it isn't. I took my hand back and opened Vincent's ledger. We follow the dependency order. Offline. We use the duplicate audit references to test what's false before anyone validates anything. And if something contradicts the chain, we stop. Your terms. My terms. Accepted. His radio crackled. Marco sounded strained. I checked the first 3 entries against offline personnel files. Number 1 is dead. Number 2 disappeared 8 months ago. Number 3 is Vincent. I turned to entry 4. No person. A location and time, Doc 9. 2:10 a.m. tonight. 26 minutes away. Beneath it was Vincent's fresher note naming me. Adrian read it once. He expected you to follow the contradiction. Apparently, I have a reputation now. Annoying people into better decisions? I was hoping for something shorter. Then Marco interrupted. One more thing. Building safety control, just switch Doc 9 to emergency isolation mode. Whoever has command access can seal the vehicle doors remotely. Adrian looked toward me. After the archive fire and the stairwell lockdown, we already knew emergency systems could override ordinary security. Now the same mechanism was active at the place Vincent had told us to go. So they know someone is coming, I said. Adrian closed the ledger. Then we stopped giving them the arrival they planned for. 26 minutes earlier, our objective had been finding a missing protector. Now we had something more dangerous, a route through the corridor's validation chain, a known weakness in its duplicate audits, and a meeting at Doc 9 that whoever controlled the building was already preparing to seal behind us. We had 26 minutes to reach Doc 9. We made it 6 before the corridor used Adrian's own organization against us. Marco's voice broke through the radio as we crossed the underground garage. Stop. Don't take the cars. Adrian froze beside the sedan waiting for us. Why? Dispatch received an emergency order in your voice. Elias abducted you, stole executive credentials, and is heading for Doc 9. Lethal force authorized if he resists. I looked at Adrian. It was the duplicate phone tactic scaled up, copied identity, legitimate channel, false reality. Nothing new. Just the same machinery finally pointed directly at me. Engines started on the floors above. Adrian took the keys from his driver and tossed them back. Nobody follows us. Boss, if the command structure is compromised, anyone acting on that order can't know which Adrian they're obeying. He turned to Marco. Keep Rourke secure. Protect the ledger. No network. Then to me, we go on foot. You realize a coward would probably choose somewhere else. His expression held mine. I'm done confusing caution with cowardice. We left through a maintenance exit and cut between warehouses toward the river. At 2:02, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered because whoever controlled the corridor already knew exactly where I was going. A flattened voice said, "You were supposed to keep walking. People keep telling me that." A file arrived. Vincent sat tied to a chair in Dock 9, a live timestamp behind him. "Bring the black card," the voice said. "Come alone. Moretti stays outside, or Vincent dies." The call ended. Adrian saw the image. "No, you don't get to decide before I do. They know the card participates in validation. They want you carrying it into a building they can seal remotely." That was the point. Every piece was converging now. Vincent, the card, Dock 9, the validation chain, and me. And Vincent is the only person who knows what entry 4 was supposed to expose, I said. If we don't go, we lose him and the rest of the sequence. Adrian looked at the timestamp. Then we go? But you choose what happens when we get there. Dock 9 looked ordinary from across the access road. That made the active emergency isolation status worse. Adrian and I stopped behind a concrete barrier. He removed his radio and handed it to me. Offline channel. They can copy my credentials and broadcast my voice, so neither proves anything anymore. What does? Judgment. Then he handed me his gun. I stared at it. That's a dramatic improvement from calling me a coward. I'm trusting the man who refused to validate a card he didn't understand. That mattered because it wasn't blind faith. He was trusting the exact behavior Vincent had identified too. Stop at contradiction, refuse force certainty. I took the weapon. If I tell you to stay outside, I stay outside, even if you think I'm making the wrong choice. Adrian hesitated. Every instinct he had was visible in that pause. Then he nodded. Yes. I entered alone. The central loading lane was lit. Vincent sat tied to the chair from the photograph. A laptop rested on a crate 10 feet from him. Between us, a pressure strip crossed the floor. Don't cross it, Vincent said. I wasn't planning to. The laptop showed 44 names and a chain of linked validation entries. Most were green. Mine was amber. Pending. That matched what we had already learned. I had been added after the original 43, and the system hadn't fully validated my place in the sequence. What does the strip do? I asked. Triggers distribution. Different evidence packages go to Moretti, Bolano, police, prosecutors. Each package makes another. Group responsible. The final function of the corridor snapped into focus. It didn't survive merely by hiding records. If someone got too close, it could release contradictory versions and make every institution attack another before anyone compared them. The card. Vincent nodded toward the laptop. They expect you to use it. I didn't move. Validation first. Contradiction becomes accepted. His own recording from the office. Exactly. And if the chain is challenged before validation, linked records go pending audit. Vincent stared at me. You found the ledger. I read instructions occasionally. Then you know the duplicate audit references are the weakness. There it was. Not a new solution, but the rule we had already earned. The missing piece was what the black card actually did at the end of the chain. Tell me what happens if I insert it. It doesn't delete anything. It acts as final auditor approval. Every linked record that survives the chain becomes certified. I looked at the card in my hand. All night, it had seemed like leverage. In reality, whoever left it under the truck had wanted an investigator frightened enough to use it. Find the contradictions. Reach the system. Then certify the very lie you were trying to stop. They planted it. Yes. Why me? They didn't choose you. Vincent nodded toward my amber entry. You were added after you kept the card and refused the incident channel. That's why your dependency is incomplete. You weren't part of the original chain. My being number 44 finally paid off. I wasn't special because fate had selected me. I was a late variable the system had rushed to contain. Then why did you send me? Because Rourke told me what you did. You walked when authority demanded compliance. You kept evidence. You refused validation without understanding the consequence. I needed someone who could reach a forced choice and still ask whether the choice itself was false. Before I could answer, the emergency shutters crashed down. We had known Dock 9 could be sealed. Now the corridor used that established control. My radio died behind steel. The laptop changed to a live camera feed outside. For Moretti, men surrounded Adrian. Their phones displayed the forged emergency order accusing me of kidnapping him. One forced him to his knees. Another held a weapon behind his head. The same corrupted command channel that had mobilized them 6 minutes earlier had delivered them here. Text appeared on the laptop. Insert card. Certify records. Vincent and Adrian live. Refuse, and both die. 60 seconds. Vincent looked at me. If you validate, the packages become trusted evidence. And the rival groups act on them. Yes. Outside, Adrian raised his head toward the camera. He couldn't hear me, but he knew what they were asking because he knew what the card did now. 30 seconds. This was the wound underneath every argument I'd had all night. Authority defined the options, then called me weak when I refused to choose fast enough. Run and be a coward. Stay and obey. Save 2 people and certify a lie. Refuse and watch them die. Adrian struggled against the man holding him, not to escape, but to turn toward the camera. Then he shook his head once. Don't do it. He was giving up the one thing early story Adrian protected above everything: control. He was trusting me even when my choice could cost him his life. 20 seconds. I put the card beside the reader without inserting it. On the screen, my 44th entry still glowed amber, its dependency incomplete. Beneath it sat the audit challenge option Vincent's ledger had described. The duplicate references we had already found were still there, waiting to be compared before validation. I had no guarantee the challenge would save Adrian. I only knew certification would turn the corridor's lies into accepted truth. 10 seconds. Vincent closed his eyes. Adrian stayed on his knees outside. For the first time, nobody was calling me brave or cowardly. Nobody could make the decision mine except me. Walking away had saved us once because I refused to obey a bad order. This time the same refusal required the opposite action. I set Adrian's gun down, put both hands on the laptop, and stayed. At 10 seconds, I picked up the black card. Then I snapped it in half. The reader stayed empty. The countdown kept moving. 9, 8, 7. I hadn't stopped the system. I had done something more important, made certification impossible through me. The choice was irreversible now. No panic at 3 seconds. No last-minute surrender to save Adrian and Vincent. Whoever built the corridor had designed this moment around the assumption that fear would eventually make me obey. They were wrong. Elias, Vincent said. The audit challenge. I was already there. My 44th entry glowed amber on the screen, still incomplete because I had been added after the original chain. Beneath it sat the same challenge function his ledger had described. The duplicate audit references we had found before the blackout gave me the contradiction. I entered the first reused reference. Then the second. The screen returned the conflict we had spent the night earning. 2 records, months apart, claiming the same trusted audit identity. 5 seconds. I submitted the challenge. The countdown reached 0. Nothing exploded. Nothing magically opened. Instead, the laptop tried to execute the distribution chain and hit the contradiction before validation. The green entries began changing to amber. Pending audit. Pending audit. Pending audit. The rule Vincent had recorded in his office was doing exactly what he said it would do. Challenge before validation, and linked records could no longer be treated as confirmed. Vincent stared at the screen. You froze the chain. Not me. I looked at the broken card. They did. 7 months ago, when they reused an audit identity because they thought nobody would ever compare systems. The 44 names remained on screen, but the evidence packages beside them lost their certified status. Moretti could still receive a file. Bolano could still receive one. Police could still receive one. But none could now carry the clean validation the corridor needed to make each lie look independently trustworthy. The system had depended on isolation. I had forced its contradictions into the same audit. Outside, the live feed showed confusion among the 4 Moretti men holding Adrian. Their forged order still existed, but the promised evidence package behind it had just been flagged pending review. One man looked down at his phone. Another shouted toward the dock. The corridor had lost the thing it relied on most: certainty. Adrian moved the instant they hesitated. He drove his shoulder into the man behind him and twisted away from the weapon. The second man grabbed for him. Adrian hit him hard enough to create space, then backed toward the shutter instead of trying to fight 4 men alone. He was doing exactly what I had spent all night trying to make him do. Not winning by force. Refusing the bad fight. Emergency release, I said. Vincent nodded toward the west wall. Mechanical control beside the fire station. We already knew emergency systems could override ordinary security. The archive suppression had done it. The stairwell doors had done it. Marco had warned us Dock 9 was in emergency isolation before we came. I crossed to the wall without stepping over the pressure strip and found the same red manual hardware used throughout Moretti's building. The control was locked behind a brake panel. I used the butt of Adrian's gun to shatter it and pulled the release. The shutter motors engaged. Steel began climbing. Outside, Adrian saw the gap and dropped flat. One of the armed men tried to force him back, but now Adrian had something he hadn't had 30 seconds earlier, an exit he trusted because I had created it. He rolled beneath the rising shutter. I caught his arm and pulled him through. The shutter stopped halfway, but that was enough. Adrian came up beside me, breathing hard, and looked first at Vincent, then the laptop, then the broken card. You didn't certify. You told me not to. Since when do you listen to me? I didn't. You happened to be right. Under any other circumstances, that might have earned something resembling a smile. Not yet. One of the armed men ducked under the half-open shutter. Adrian moved toward him. Wait. He stopped because I said it. That was the payoff. Not obedience. Trust. I picked up the laptop and turned the screen toward the attacker. Every linked record was amber. Every disputed authorization, including the forged order naming me as Adrian's kidnapper, was now visibly tied to the same challenged validation chain. Your order came through a compromised identity, I said. The man hesitated. Boss. He looked at Adrian. Adrian didn't attack him. Lower your weapon. The man did. The others outside saw it happen and began lowering theirs too. The corridor's power had never been 4 gunmen. It was the ability to make 4 gunmen certain they were doing the right thing before anyone could compare evidence. I had taken that certainty away. Adrian freed Vincent while I copied the audit conflict screen and dependency sequence onto the offline drive already attached to Vincent's laptop. I didn't create new evidence. I preserved the collision between evidence we already had. Reused audit identities, forged authorizations, 43 original witnesses, my incomplete 44th entry, and the linked systems on the black card. Vincent looked at the screen. Now Moretti, Bolano, and the city can compare the same contradictions. Which is what the corridor spent years preventing. Exactly. The operational network wasn't anonymous anymore either. The emergency order that mobilized Adrian's men, the copied access identities, the Dock 9 isolation command, and the distribution attempt all carried the disputed audit chain we had just frozen. Anyone who tried to activate another linked record would surface inside the same review instead of disappearing behind a trusted credential. We didn't know every person involved. We didn't need to tonight. Their mechanism for controlling everyone else was exposed and unusable. Moretti security arrived minutes later through the released entrance. Adrian stepped between them and me before anyone could ask what I had done. Nobody touches Elias. One guard looked at the broken card. Boss, he destroyed the validation key. Adrian didn't look away from me. Good. One word. No apology. Better than one. Hours earlier, he had called me a coward because I walked away with the thing he needed. Now I had destroyed that thing rather than let anyone use it to force my hand, and Adrian publicly chose my judgment over his own system. The corridor was frozen. The Bolano trigger had failed. Vincent was alive. The forged command structure had been exposed. By its own contradictions, the core conflict was decided. I handed Adrian his gun. For the first time since Dock 9 began, he no longer needed the card, the secret, or anything else I carried. He looked toward the open exit, then back at me. You can leave now. Not an order. Not a test. Freedom. And after spending the whole night fighting for the right to walk away, I discovered that having the choice scared me more than being told to stay. You can leave now. Adrian said it quietly, with the dock doors open behind him and no one standing between me and them. For once, there was no hidden order inside the words. No guard waiting to redirect me. No secret in my pocket that made me valuable enough to keep. Behind us, Marco's team secured offline copies of the challenged records while Vincent sat with a medic, one wrist wrapped where the restraints had cut him. The forged Bolano package was frozen with the rest of the disputed chain. The copied order naming me as Adrian's kidnapper was evidence now, not authority. The corridor had lost its ability to make one lie look like 44 separate truths. I looked down at the two broken halves of the black card near the reader. A few hours earlier, I had walked away with it because keeping something for myself felt safer than trusting anyone else with it. Now it was useless plastic. "You're serious," I said. "Yes. No escort. Only if you ask for one. And if I don't." Adrian stepped aside, leaving the path to the exit completely clear. "Then you don't." That was the answer. Not protection disguised as control. Not another decision made for me. Choice. Marco approached with the offline drive in one hand. The audit conflict is preserved in 3 separate copies. Vincent's ledger stays offline. Rourke's statement is being recorded the same way. He looked at Adrian. "What about Elias?" A few Moretti men were close enough to hear the question. Hours ago, Adrian had called me a coward in front of his people. Now he didn't lower his voice. "Elias decides what happens to Elias." He didn't look at me for approval afterward. He simply meant it. Marco nodded. "Good." Then he held out my real phone. And we confirmed that. One in the van was planted. "This one's clean." I took it. "So my criminal duplicate is officially retired?" With prejudice. Shame. I was hoping he'd improve my social life. Marco almost smiled, then left us alone without asking whether Adrian wanted him to stay. Changed treatment, everywhere I looked. Adrian glanced at the bandage around my palm. The handkerchief underneath, it was ruined. "You should have that cleaned properly." "Careful." That sounded like concern. "I'm experimenting with it." Risky. The warmth lasted only a moment before something quieter replaced it. Adrian looked toward the open doors. "I was wrong about you." I waited. He didn't dress it up. "I thought walking away meant you couldn't handle pressure. Tonight, every time the rest of us wanted to move faster, you stopped long enough to see what didn't fit." His gaze dropped briefly to the broken card. "Including when 2 lives were being used to force you." I was afraid. I know. No contradiction. No speech about fear making courage meaningful. Just acceptance. Somehow that was better. I flexed my bandaged hand. For a long time, people calling me afraid felt like them deciding the rest of the story too. Adrian nodded once. "I did that." "Yes. I won't do it again." I believed him because he already hadn't. He had handed me his weapon. Stayed outside when I told him to. Trusted my choice when that choice might have killed him. And now, when keeping me close would have been the easiest thing for a man like Adrian Moretti to justify, he had opened the door. Vincent passed us on his way out with the medic. He stopped beside me. "Rourke wants you to know he's sorry. For lying to me or being terrible at protecting people?" I believe his exact phrase was both. "Tell him I'll consider being less annoyed in 3 to 5 business years." Vincent's mouth twitched. Then his expression settled. "He pushed you off that floor because he knew incident reports were monitored. He didn't know what you'd taken. Neither did I until afterward. One last loose end, closed without changing what mattered. Rourke had tried to protect me and still treated me badly doing it. Both things could be true. And the 43? I asked. Alive. Scattered, for now. Which is safer until the audit teams can contact them outside the compromised channels. I nodded. Vincent squeezed Adrian's shoulder as he passed, then kept walking. No new mystery. Just people who had survived long enough to deal with tomorrow. Adrian and I stood beside the open loading lane. "What happens now?" I asked. "With the investigation?" "With us." That stopped him. Adrian Moretti, who had spent most of the night answering uncertainty with commands, took his time. "I don't know." I smiled faintly. "You're getting disturbingly good at that." "At ignorance?" "At admitting it." He looked toward the exit again. "I know I want to see you tomorrow." That was smaller than asking me to stay forever. It was also harder to dismiss. Tomorrow. Coffee. Somewhere without guns, forged credentials, or organized crime logistics. That limits your usual venues. I'll adapt. You've had practice. He took one step closer and stopped. "And tonight?" I looked past him at the open doors. I could leave. That was what made the answer matter. I held out my bandaged hand. Adrian looked at it, then at me, and waited. I moved my hand the last few inches myself. His fingers closed around mine. Gently. No claim. No leverage. "Tonight," I said, "you can walk me out. Walk you out." beside me. Something softened in his face. Understood. We crossed the loading lane together. When we reached the threshold, I stopped. Adrian stopped too. He didn't pull me forward. Didn't ask why I was hesitating. He just stayed there, holding my hand loosely enough that I could take it back whenever I wanted. So I turned toward him. His free hand lifted, then paused near my face. That pause was the question. I answered by leaning into his palm. His forehead touched mine first. Quiet. Careful. Nothing like the man who had stood across a conference table and decided what my choices meant before asking why I made them. When I kissed him, it wasn't a promise about forever. It was a promise about the next choice. Tomorrow. Coffee. The chance to find out what we were when neither danger nor secrets required us to remain together. When we pulled apart, Adrian glanced at my bandaged hand. I suppose I owe you a handkerchief. You complained about me bleeding on your floor. I was having a difficult evening. Coward. He looked at me for one beat, and this time the word had no power left in it. His quiet laugh followed us toward the exit. Outside, the road split at the end of the dock. Left toward the route I could take alone, right toward Adrian's car and whatever came after tonight. He stopped at the split and waited. Hours earlier, I had walked away because staying meant letting someone else define my choice. Now nobody was stopping me from leaving. I looked at the open road, squeezed Adrian's hand, and turned right beside him. This time I stayed.